My great-aunt Elara always said the stones remembered. Not just the big, carved ones, mind you, but any rock that had seen a generation come and go. Especially the Fallows stone. It wasn't impressive to look at, just a rough, grey boulder the size of a small hearth sitting in a field that seemed to swallow sunlight. But every autumn, without fail, the families in the valley would gather around it, not for worship, not exactly, but for an acknowledgement. A small offering laid on its flat top, a handful of the first harvest grain, a splash of clear spring water, sometimes a single silver coin. It keeps the ground honest, Elara would murmur, her voice like dry leaves. We'd laugh, us younger ones, at the superstition, but we still participated just in case. What harm could it do? That was before the year the drought hit, and my cousin, Thomas, decided to finally break with tradition. Thomas had always been the practical one, scoffing at what he called old wives' tales. He'd inherited the largest farm in the valley, a sprawling expanse that bordered the Fallows field, and he was determined to modernize. A few grains won't bring rain, he'd declared that year, wiping sweat from his brow. Hard work and irrigation will. He ploughed right past the Fallows stone, his tractor rumbling a disrespectful tune. The rest of us still made our offerings, a little more somberly, perhaps, than usual. The drought, though severe, was a natural occurrence, we told ourselves. It had nothing to do with Thomas's defiance. Until the first harvest, the corn in his fields was stunted, the kernels dry and shriveled on the cob. Mine, though not abundant, was at least edible. A few others had meager yields, but Thomas's crop was a complete write-off. He blamed the soil, the seeds, everything but the Fallows stone. We didn't say anything, but we all exchanged worried glances. The next year, Thomas doubled down. He bought new fertilizers, brought in different seed strains. He worked harder than anyone, rising before dawn, toiling until long after dusk. He skipped the autumn offering entirely. Superstition starves a man, he'd told my father, his voice sharp. Science feeds him. That harvest was even worse. His wheat, planted with such hope, came up patchy and brittle, the stalk snapping at a touch. And then the blight started, specifically in his fields. A strange, black mold that consumed everything it touched, spreading like ink across his land. Our crops were struggling, yes, but not like his. Our potatoes were small, our beans sparse, but we had something to show for our labor. Thomas, again, had nothing. His face grew thin, his eyes haunted. He started muttering to himself, walking his blighted fields like a madman. That winter was bitter. Thomas started selling off his equipment piece by piece to make ends meet. He became reclusive, barely speaking to anyone, even his own family. Sometimes, late at night, I'd hear him through the thin walls of our old farmhouse, shouting or sobbing. He began to say strange things about the ground being hungry, about cold hands reaching from below. We thought the stress had finally broken him. My great-aunt Elara, however, simply nodded. "The stones remember, child," she'd said, her voice softer than usual. "And they are patient. What's owed will always be collected." I tried to talk to Thomas, to suggest he at least try the offering again, just to humor us. He just stared at me with vacant eyes, then turned away, mumbling about the ground needing more than grain now. He said it needed warmth. Spring arrived, a weak, hesitant thing after such a harsh winter. Thomas's fields lay barren, untouched. He hadn't planted anything. He spent his days sitting on his porch, staring out at the empty land, sometimes tracing patterns in the dirt with a stick. He had sold almost everything, even his tractor. His wife and children had moved in with her sister in the next town over, unable to bear his silence and despair. He was utterly alone. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in bruised purples and oranges, I saw him get up. He walked slowly, deliberately, towards the Fallows field. My heart pounded with a sudden, unreasoning fear. I watched him from my window, hidden by the fading light. He reached the Fallows stone. He didn't lay anything on it. Instead, he just stood there for a long time, his shoulders slumped. The air grew still, unnervingly so. Not a breath of wind, not a single cricket chirp. The world seemed to hold its breath. Then he knelt, not reverently, but as if his legs had given out. He placed his hands on the rough surface of the stone, his head bowed. I thought he was finally giving in, perhaps praying. But then I saw him shift. He wasn't praying. He was listening, his head cocked, as if hearing something deep beneath the earth. A shiver ran down my spine, despite the distance. He stood up again slowly, and then he did the most inexplicable thing. Thomas began to dig, with his bare hands, right next to the Fallows stone. His movements were slow at first, then became frantic, almost desperate. He clawed at the dry earth, sending clods flying. I couldn't understand. Was he looking for something? Burying something? The sun was long gone now, and the only light came from a sliver of moon. I could barely make out his form, a dark silhouette against the paler earth. He dug deeper and deeper until he was almost swallowed by the hole he was creating. I wanted to call out to stop him, but my throat felt paralyzed, choked by a dread I couldn't name, a primal, ancient fear that whispered, "Some things are meant to be left undisturbed." He stopped digging abruptly. There was a sickening thump that echoed across the quiet field, even from my window. Then silence, a deep, unsettling silence. I waited, heart hammering, for him to emerge, to explain, but he didn't. I watched until the first hint of dawn, until the grey light painted the field in a desolate wash. Then, summoning every ounce of courage, I walked to the Fallows stone. The hole was deep, strangely neat, and at the bottom, partially covered by disturbed earth, lay Thomas's old pocket watch, the one his grandfather had given him, and next to it, glinting in the pale light, a single silver coin. The Fallows stone glistened with dew, looking strangely satisfied. The ground had found its warmth, and in our valley, every autumn since, the offering on the Fallows stone has been doubled. No one, not ever, skips it anymore. They know the stones remember, and sometimes they grow hungry for a different kind of harvest. Thank you for listening. If this story found you in the dark, subscribe and turn on notifications. A new tale waits every night.